everyone, thanks for tuning into today's video. We've got a bumper edition for today's video, so a lot to cram in. Going to be a little bit more like what we do on a Sunday, really, but very interesting times at the moment in terms of this stratospheric warming, which is beginning to get going now over the North Pole. So I'll talk you through all of that. Then we'll have a look at the models next week to 10 days. At the end, we'll see the Beijing Climate Centre. Have a look at that. I looked at that for a little while. Have a look at Beijing Climate Centre going through February. Before I get on with all of that, though, just to say about the ads, there's links to articles on all the pages. If you have a browse widget to click through the links, you're going to help us to pay for the website. Thanks so much for doing that. There's also video ads to those pages, which open up content and give those a watch. You'll be helping us to pay for our website. Just starting at website XC Web, we've got a really cold day today. So at midday, gone midday now, many eastern parts of the country are still at or below freezing. So Leeming, for example, at freezing. East Midlands Airport at -1. Church Lawford at -1. Try somewhere else. High Wycombe at -2 with a dew point of -3. There's moisture in the air. This will be easily cold enough to snow. Unfortunately, it's dry air, or fortunately, depending on your point of view, dry air, so no snow. A few snow flurries, perhaps, within the cloud, but nothing significant. London City Airport at 0 degrees. Biggin Hill at -2. London Gatwick at -1 there. Heathrow is at -1. That's normally one of the warmest places in the country. And we go down to a few of these places down in the southeast. So Leeds Airport is at -1, Manston is at -2, and try somewhere else. Let's go up to East Anglia. Wattisham at -2 as well. It's a very different scene out to the northwest though. So we've got out Hebrides, Stornoway is at +10, and coming down into the Republic of Ireland, Shannon Airport is at +8, and going through to let's try there. Cork Airport is just at +7. Those milder temperatures that we've got in the west and the northwest will be heading our way over the next few days. So if you like cold weather, if you like it freezing cold, enjoy it, because it's a one-day only offer. Tomorrow the temperatures are going to start to lift up. And talking of temperatures lifting up, this is the current temperature at 10 HPA over the North Pole. I've been looking at this quite a lot recently. We've been cold, of course, earlier in the winter. We was down there, colder than average. The grey line, of course, is the overall average temperature at this time of year. Notice this black line is beginning to move upwards. So we're back to average now with the temperatures at 10 HPA in the stratosphere over the North Pole. Over the next 2 or 3 days, this black line is going to rise very significantly. It'll be pushing up something like that. It'll be straighter than I've drawn it, but you will see that black line really lifting up. How far up the chart it gets will be very interesting to see. I suspect it might get somewhere around there, but we'll wait and see. Excuse me. Anyway, the temperature at 10 HPA in the stratosphere is now on its way up. This is the GFS temperature forecast for 10 HPA at metrosil.fr. There's the yellow colours beginning to move in towards the North Pole, and this is going to increase over the next couple of days. So a big warming event taking place, of red colours penetrating into the top of the North Pole at 10 HPA. Eases off a little bit, and then another warming occurs around the 31st of January into the 1st of February. Second warming pushing in towards the North Pole. And then, look at this, another one on the 2nd of February into the 3rd. So repeated warmings taking place at 10 HPA in the stratosphere over the North Pole, running up into the start of February. That does look very significant. And then it's run through into the early part of February. Well, another warming is occurring there around the 3rd and 4th February. Not quite as strong as the early warmings, but it remains generally quite warm at 10 HPA in the stratosphere, going through up towards the 11th of February, which is as far as we can go with the GFS model. ECWF is on board for this stratospheric warming as well. So this is the temperature forecast from the ECWF ECMWF model from the University of Berlin website. Find the link to that on the links page. This is the stratospheric temperature at 10 HPA for tomorrow, 27th of January, where we've got those red colours pushing into the pole. The black cross there is the actual North Pole. As we go through to the 29th of January, again, we see a major warming event is taking place over the North Pole. Significant warming there with those red colours pushing into the stratosphere, and that continues up to the 31st of January. Levels off a bit during early February. Then another one comes through on the 4th of February. So same idea, a little bit different with the days, but same idea with the ECMWF as we saw with the GFS, which is for repeated warmings to be taking place at 10 HPA in the stratosphere over the North Pole, increasingly putting, you would assume, the polar vortex and those cold temperatures lower down in the troposphere, which is the boundary of the axial weather that's taking place, putting those colder temperatures under pressure. Now, is this just a warming, a stratospheric warming, albeit quite a significant one, or is it what we call a sudden stratospheric warming, which has to be classified very strongly, if you like? There's a very definitive definition for a sudden stratospheric warming, which is that we have to reverse the zonal winds in the stratosphere. Now, this chart shows that we are doing that at 1 HPA, which is far up as you can go in the stratosphere. So at that level, yes, we see that we are getting a reversal of the zonal winds. They're going negative. So this is where they are right now, already on their way down as it begins to warm up in the stratosphere. And the forecast, which is this black line just here, that tells us that the zonal winds at 1 HPA are going into reverse. They're going negative, it's going easterly. So that would be a stratospheric warming, sudden stratospheric warming at 1 HPA. But if we come down to 10 and 30 HPA, which is on this graph, signalled by, for the blue line, 10 HPA, and for the red line by 30 HPA, we see we get very close with the forecast to go into a sudden stratospheric warming, to go negative, but we don't quite get there. So it isn't, at the moment, looking like a sudden stratospheric warming. The models are differing on this, though, from run to run. Whatever happens, it's going to be a very significant warming, and whether it actually splits a polar vortex, which it'll do if it is a sudden stratospheric warming, or whether it just disrupts the polar vortex and sends it off in towards Siberia or something like that, whether it does that, which is just a stratospheric warming, it does look a very significant event that is about to occur. So we'll be keeping you updated on that, of course. Are we seeing any response yet in terms of the Arctic oscillation? This is the Arctic oscillation observed and forecast chart, black line here, where we've been with the Arctic oscillation, red lines at the end where forecast go. We see that we are increasingly trending the Arctic oscillation forecast from the GFS ensembles down into negative territory. So it looks like already we might be starting to see a little bit of a response in terms of the Arctic oscillation, which is reflecting whether we've got blocking over the pole, essentially. So we might already be starting to see the Arctic oscillation beginning to pick up on some blocking. That might be a result of this stratospheric warming. We won't say a sudden stratospheric warming yet, because we don't know if it's going to be a sudden stratospheric warming, but stratospheric warming anyway. We might be starting to see the Arctic oscillation responding a little bit to that. No sign of a North Atlantic oscillation going negative, though. The forecast of the GFS ensembles is to keep that generally around or above neutral in positive territory. So no sign of the NAO going negative at this stage. Arctic oscillation possibly as we're getting towards February. These are the dates, by the way. That's the 1st of February just there. So possibly into February, signs that the Arctic oscillation is beginning to go negative. Coming back to next week to 10 days, these are the 500 millibar height anomalies for next week to 10 days. This takes us up to around the 6th of February. Got the ECMWF here on the top, the GFS have a look at it in a moment. It's on bottom, 500 millibars, 80,000 feet, is that level of the atmosphere that we call the troposphere. It's where weather is taking place. Blue extrapolates to low pressure and red to high pressure. So for the next week to 10 days, into next week essentially, got a very deep trough of low pressure in the Atlantic with a strong jet stream as well. That's probably going to be the most unsettled spell that we've had so far this winter. Notice we've got these red colours up here. Looks like we might be starting to bring in a little bit of high pressure to the north. Have to keep an eye on that over the next few days. Will these orange and red colours be strengthened in this sort of area where that stratospheric warming is taking place? If we get high pressure up there, then we're going to start to try and push cold air out. We will try and push cold air out into mid-latitudes, and the question will be where that high pressure goes. So we'll have to keep an eye on that over the next few days. GFS is very similar as well. Again, really deep trough in the Atlantic, so that looks very unsettled through the course of next week. Be quite a lot of rain coming up, and again just some very, very minor above average heights getting going around Greenland. Again, we will need to keep an eye on this over the next week or two to see whether the models start to strengthen that blocking signal. GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next 2 weeks. Generally looking mild and average. You notice we are milder than average today, but it's freezing cold. So it's just going to show you upper air temperatures don't tell you everything you need to know about the weather. So today we've got a continental feeder there. That means that the upper air temperatures being mild on average, being offset by freezing cold on the surface. However, as we go into this Atlantic weather next week, we are solidly above average then. And it is going to be a mild and average week through next week, starting really from tomorrow and the weekend. Precipitation, still lots of rainfall spikes coming up, maybe not quite as bad as we saw yesterday with those rainfall spikes, but nevertheless, that does look like a proper wet spell beginning to get going through the start of February, and even to the end of the chart, which takes into the second week of February just here, still lots and lots of rainfall spikes coming through then. So mild and unsettled really still sums it up for early February, whatever's going on in the stratosphere. Looks Atlantic driven for the start of February anyway. Temperature anomalies for next week coming out milder than average. Notice the colder than average temperature anomalies are increasingly being forced into the southeast of Europe. Still looks freezing cold across southeast of Europe, but many central, northern and western parts of Europe beginning to see those temperature anomalies warming up. Precipitation anomalies still more or less for eastern parts of the UK hanging on to drier than average precipitation anomalies, but I think we will find it turning increasingly wet on these charts over the next few days. Let's have a look at on Monday then. Low pressure driving in off the Atlantic through the early part of next week. We'll be bringing bands of rain across the country. A little bit of a drier spell through the middle part of next week perhaps, but here we go on the 2nd of February, bringing a deep low pressure, deep trough in the Atlantic into the UK. There's sort of wet weather associated with that. And then as we run up to the end of next week and the first weekend of February, that low pressure just sort of parks itself out to the west and throws up secondary, or we could say daughter lows, that bring bands of rain and strong winds across the country. So it does look very significantly unsettled through the early part of February. Are we at this point, on day 10th, Sunday the 5th of February, are we beginning to raise a little bit of pressure to the north? Possibly we are starting to do that. It's more obvious as we go out to the 6th of February that heights might be starting to rise to the north. Generally, though, it is looking very unsettled, mild, wet and windy through that first week of February. Again, we need to keep an eye on how much the models start to raise pressure to the north, particularly as we're running up towards the middle and then the second half of February. East central US looking like this, wet and windy to start next week. Stays unsettled through the week. There's that deep trough coming in on Thursday the 2nd of February. That looks very wet and windy, and then that low pressure just parking itself out to west, throwing up daughter lows, so we keep it very unsettled through that first weekend of February with bands of rain, strong winds come across the country as well. Be a big change on what we've had so far this winter. And then finally, we'll just have a look at Beijing Climate Centre. So these are the 500 millibar high dollars broken down into 10-day periods. The first 10-day period we're going to look at takes us from the 31st of January through to the 9th of February. So for the first week of February, looking very, very unsettled. We already know it's going to be a really unsettled spell. Strong jet stream, wet and windy bands of rain sweeping across the country through that first week of February. Change starts to take place through the middle part of February. This is the 10th through the 19th of February. Pressure begins to rise to the south and to the east. We have to come over here. Pressure rises to the south and east. The trough is stalling out in the Atlantic. Jet stream is probably doing something like that. So we break out of that really unsettled start to February through the middle part of the month. Does look drier, probably a bit colder as well. And you would expect frost certainly to be coming up or coming back with that. And then we go through to the final 10 days of February. This is the 20th of February through to the 1st of March. Notice we've got signs of a classic Scandinavian high setting up then. Go over here, we've got the above average heights to the north and the east. That could well be turning the winds into the east through the final stages of February, the final week to 10 days of February. We might find the winds turning into the east. We might actually pull off a Scandinavian high. Had several goes at it this winter and not been able to do it. Will we do it at the end of February? Watch this space. It would tie in with that stratospheric warming when we would expect to start to get the real implications from it mid to late February. So watch this space. So that's it. Been a bit of a bumper edition today, but we managed to keep it under 20 minutes actually, so not too bad. We're definitely going to see this warming. Whether it reaches a sudden stratospheric warming, we have to wait and see. Nevertheless, whatever happens, it is going to be a major warming at 10 HPA in the stratosphere over pole. It's starting today, will strengthen over the next couple of days. We'll be keeping an eye on it, of course. And but the immediate interest is really for next week when it looks quite wet and windy, and we haven't had much of that this winter, so it'll be quite a change on what we've had so far through the winter. JMA Friday tomorrow, having a look at the month ahead. That takes us through most of February, so come back for that tomorrow. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.